Hello, this is Ms. Sepulveda and this is Global 3. We are jumping right back in where we left off before we changed our curriculum for last week. We were talking about Latin American revolutions, and just to review, what we did was talk about the situation and how people lived during that time after colonization by the Spaniards, and the effects it had on the natives that lived there. But first, let's do a quick vocabulary review. If you were to take a look at the PowerPoint that I am including in this video, you will see that the first term is revolution. A revolution is a big change. Sometimes the change is violent or drastic. That would be an example of a political revolution, which is the next term. This type of revolution involves a big change in government. Many times, this type of change is violent and a lot of people die. For example, the French Revolution, which we already studied. However, there have been instances in history where there has been a political revolution without violence. That doesn't happen very often, but it did during the Glorious Revolution. Finally, we have a non-political revolution. This type of revolution involves a big change that has nothing to do with government. For example, the scientific revolution is one, the industrial revolution is another. These were big changes in society, however, it had nothing to do with government. I would like to review the Latin American social hierarchy. If you recall from our previous lesson, when the Spaniards got to the New World, they organized people into different classes. The ones on the bottom were the Indians, which there was a greater population, and they're the ones that had the least or no rights at all. On the top, you see the Peninsulares, which were people that were born in Spain, and they were in charge of mostly everything and had the most benefits. If you don't remember these categories and their corresponding benefits and responsibilities, please review our previous lesson. Today, we're going to talk about the reasons for nationalist governments. Now, if you remember, nationalism is the love for your own country. So when we talk about nationalist movements, we're talking about people that rose off to fight to get Spain out of their country. They fought, they risked their lives, they didn't care. They wanted them out for the love of their country and their people. Now let's look at the reasons why they would be willing to die to get their independence from Spain. Was it that bad? Well, let's see. If we look at bullet point number 1, Latin Americans resented, they resented the restrictions that forbade them to travel with countries other than Spain. So once the Spaniards got to these Latin American countries, they forced them to only trade with them. That limited their whole trade business because they could only trade with Spain. They certainly did not like that. Also, Latin Americans resented restrictions that prevented them from manufacturing their own goods. They couldn't even make their own goods in their own countries. So that definitely was a source of anger and resentment. Bullet point number 3. The American, which you will study in American history, but we've talked about in class, the American and French revolutions encouraged freedom and self-rule. Now, we did study the French Revolution, so I'm going to refer to that one. If you recall, the French Revolution happened because of an unfair system. Well, Latin Americans were feeling that they also were part of an unfair system, and they felt that if the Americans could do it and the French could do it, well, guess what? They could also do it. And so that encouraged them to fight for their freedom and their self-rule. They wanted Spain to get out, and they wanted to rule themselves. Finally, after Napoleon's defeat, many Latin American colonies, they refused to return to Spanish rule, and they demanded independence. They wanted to be free. Independence. They wanted to be free and rule on their own without any interference from Spain. So here, once again, we're talking about the American and French Revolution, their influence on Latin American revolutions. So when Napoleon conquered Spain, it opened the door so that the Latin Americans would be able to govern themselves. So that definitely was a plus, and it helped them tremendously. So let's take a look at our first nationalist. His name was Simón Bolívar. Simón Bolívar defeated the Spanish forces between 1819 and 1825. He liberated the countries we now know as Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia, all Latin American countries. He is very loved and very honored in those countries because they credit him as giving their countries their freedom. Next up, we have Toussaint Louverture. He led an uprising of African slaves in 1791, where he forced the France out of Haiti. If you recall, France colonized Haiti. And for the same reasons quoted for Latin Americans wanting their freedom, Haiti was no exception. And Louverture led the first Latin American colony, Haiti, to achieve its independence. They became free in 1791. Next, we have José de San Martín. He worked to liberate Argentina and Chile from Spanish rule in the years 1816 and 1818. So as you can see, more and more countries are becoming liberated, and you see who was responsible for leading the revolution in those particular countries. Next, we have next and final nationalist that we're going to talk about today is Miguel Hidalgo. He was a priest, and he began a rebellion against the Spanish rule in Mexico in 1810. However, at that time, he failed, but Mexico did later achieve their independence in 1821. Now, finally, there's one more. José de San Martín. Oh, I did tell you that one. Never mind. All right, so finally, we want to talk about the effects. So what happened? What happened as a result of the independence they got from Spain? How did they fare after that? Did they do well? Let's see. Well, after independence, dictatorships, unstable governments, and poverty affected many Latin American nations. Land and wealth remained in the hands of a small elite, that means rich people with power. Military leaders also ruled in some places. So what I would like for you to do is, if need be, I would like for you to rewind this video as many times as possible so that you can make sure that the information that was shared with you today is something that you could be able to talk about and use and apply to the assignment that is attached and due for today. If you have any questions, any doubts, please do not hesitate to contact me. You could contact me through Remind or my email. Either way, I will respond. good luck, and I'll see you soon. Till next time. Bye.